Ladies, have you ever noticed how someone who seemed completely detached, someone who ran when things got too real, somehow circles back into your life? It's a confusing, often frustrating experience. You might ask yourself, why now? Why me? The answer lies in understanding the psychology of avoidance and the magnetic pull of women who exude patience, self-worth, and emotional strength. Avoidants are not heartless. They are often overwhelmed by intimacy. When they left, it wasn't always about you. It was about their fear of being truly seen and vulnerable. But here's the secret. The woman they think will wait forever becomes a mirror for their growth, a reflection of stability and emotional resilience they secretly crave. When an avoidant returns, it's rarely about timing. It's about readiness. They recognize that the woman they underestimated has boundaries, self-respect, and a life full of her own purpose. The contrast between her independence and their earlier fear triggers a realization. This is the person I can't stop thinking about, the woman who taught me what commitment truly means. It's crucial to understand that their return isn't a guaranteed promise. It's a second chance, but it comes with the unspoken test of whether you will still honor yourself while navigating their re-entry. The key is to stay grounded, stay confident, and remember, the power lies in your choice, not in waiting endlessly for someone who left. So the next time an avoidant reappears in your life, recognize the deeper reason behind their return. They come back not because you chased them, but because your value became undeniable, because the woman they thought would wait forever became the woman who can't be replaced. And that, my friends, is when transformation, not desperation, creates the magnetic pull they can't resist. Avoidants leave not because you did something wrong, not because you weren't enough, but because their own fears about intimacy become too heavy to bear. It's a common misconception that when someone pulls away, it's a reflection of your value or your worthiness as a partner. In reality, avoidants are often people who struggle with closeness on a deep emotional level. They feel vulnerable when someone truly sees them, and vulnerability for them can feel unsafe or suffocating. When they start to sense a connection that demands emotional availability, a part of them panics. This panic isn't personal, it's deeply internal. It's tied to a lifetime of patterns, experiences, and fears that have taught them that closeness equals potential pain or loss. This is why avoidance can seem so confusing. They may flirt, show interest, even appear deeply involved, only to suddenly pull away when the relationship starts moving toward depth. To the outside observer, it seems like a rejection of love itself, but for the avoidant, it's a self-protective mechanism. Their departure is often about managing an internal tension between desire and fear. They may want connection, intimacy, and closeness, but the closer they get, the louder the alarm bells in their mind ring. This internal conflict can be so intense that walking away feels like the only option to maintain their sense of safety and control. The woman they leave behind is often someone exceptional, not because she did anything wrong, but because she triggers something within them that they aren't ready to face. Her presence highlights emotions, commitment, and vulnerability that they are not yet equipped to handle. This doesn't mean they don't care. In fact, it often means they care too much in ways they don't know how to process. Their departure is rarely a statement about your worth. It's a reflection of their own emotional capacity at that moment in time. What's critical to understand is that avoidance is not permanent. It's a phase of self-protection, not a verdict on love or value. Avoidance may leave repeatedly, oscillating between the pull of connection and the push of fear, but this cycle is always rooted in their internal struggle, not in your shortcomings. Recognizing this can be transformative for the woman left in their wake. When you understand that their leaving is about their internal landscape, it becomes easier to separate your self-worth from their behavior. You begin to see that their actions are a mirror of their own fears and limitations, not a measure of your desirability, your patience, or your ability to love. In essence, avoidants leave because they are wrestling with the enormity of their own vulnerability. They flee not from love, but from the intensity of emotions they haven't yet learned to navigate. And when you realize this, you shift the narrative from feeling rejected to understanding a deeper psychological truth. Their departure is about them, not you. The woman who waits wisely is not passive or stagnant. She is a force of calm confidence, a reflection of self-respect and inner strength that avoidants often fail to recognize until it's too late. Her patience is not about tolerating uncertainty or sacrificing her own life for someone else's indecision. It's about maintaining boundaries, honoring her own needs, and living a life that doesn't revolve solely around the avoidant's emotional availability. When an avoidant encounters a woman like this, she becomes more than just someone waiting for them. She becomes a mirror reflecting the growth and emotional maturity they have yet to fully embrace. The qualities she embodies, independence, self-assurance, and emotional stability, highlight the areas where the avoidant has been lacking, often without them even realizing it. For the avoidant, seeing this woman who refuses to lower her standards or compromise her values triggers a complex mix of emotions. There is admiration, yes, but also a sudden awareness of loss. She represents a rare combination, someone who loves but does not cling, someone who cares but does not chase. This balance is something avoidants often run from in the moment, but it is exactly what they secretly crave once they see it in action. The longer the avoidant has been away, the more they are forced to confront what they left behind, a woman whose life and emotional presence are undeniable, a woman whose boundaries and self-worth cannot be ignored or manipulated. This dynamic is powerful because it highlights the difference between availability and desire. Avoidants are often attracted to independence, even if their fear initially pushes them away. The woman who waits wisely is never desperate. She does not beg for their attention, and she does not compromise who she is in order to fit their comfort zone. Instead, she continues to live fully, cultivating her own goals, passions, and connections. From the avoidance perspective, this creates a magnetic pull that is both irresistible and intimidating. They begin to see that what they once took for granted, the stability, consistency, and respect she offers, is not something they can easily find elsewhere. Moreover, her patience teaches them indirectly about what commitment can look like without pressure or suffocation. They start to realize that waiting is not a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of confidence and emotional intelligence. It shows that love does not require control or manipulation, and that a truly valuable partner is someone who inspires growth rather than fear. In watching her maintain her dignity while he struggled with his own limitations, the avoidant begins to understand that she is not simply waiting for them to return out of desperation. She is showing them the consequences of their actions in a way that respects herself and her worth. Ultimately, the woman who waits wisely holds a subtle but undeniable power. She embodies a life fully lived, a self-respect that cannot be ignored, and an emotional consistency that challenges the avoidant to rise to a higher level of maturity. In doing so, she becomes not just someone to return to, but someone whose presence forces reflection, growth, and a new understanding of what it means to truly value and cherish a connection. An avoidant often returns when readiness aligns with realization, a moment that can feel sudden but is really the culmination of a long internal process. The timing is rarely about the other person's actions or persistence. It is about the avoidant's own internal journey. They may have spent weeks, months, or even years processing their fear of intimacy, examining their past patterns, or confronting the consequences of leaving someone they once valued. During this time, they often experience a quiet, unsettling awareness that what they thought they wanted, the freedom to avoid vulnerability at all costs, is incomplete. The woman they left becomes a benchmark for what genuine emotional connection feels like, and in that realization, something shifts. This return is not a casual decision, a reflection of readiness. Avoidants do not easily admit that they need another chance, and they rarely act impulsively when it comes to matters of the heart. What often triggers their return is a combination of reflection, longing, and the recognition of value. They start to see the woman they underestimated not as a safety net that will always be there, but as a rare, irreplaceable presence whose love and patience were never ordinary. This recognition is deeply humbling for them because it contrasts sharply with their previous avoidance. For the first time, they might confront the reality that running away was not the answer, and that the fear that drove them to leave is something they now feel prepared or compelled to overcome. Readiness is closely tied to emotional growth. When an avoidant returns, it is often because they have started to integrate the lessons their absence taught them. They understand the weight of what they left behind, and they sense that life without that connection is not as fulfilling as they once imagined. The woman who remained true to herself during their absence becomes the living proof of their own shortcomings and missed opportunities. Her boundaries, her independence, and her unwavering sense of self create a contrast with their previous behavior, highlighting not just what they lost, but also what they must now strive to become if they hope to be worthy of a renewed connection. It's important to note that readiness does not guarantee permanence. An avoidance return can be genuine, but it still comes with challenges because the patterns that caused their initial withdrawal may resurface if not consciously addressed. This is why understanding the timing of their return is critical. It signals that they are confronting their fears, but it also signals that you must remain grounded in your own self-worth. The power of their reappear. Rance lies not in their presence, but in the fact that they are now confronting themselves. Their return is less about you chasing them and more about their acknowledgement that your value was underestimated and that they are willing to do the work to be capable of a true connection. Ultimately, the alignment of readiness and realization is a turning point. It is the moment when the avoidant sees clearly the consequences of their avoidance and the significance of the woman they once left. It is a delicate balance between opportunity and self-reflection, a moment that is as much about their growth as it is about the potential for reconnection. Boundaries and self-worth are the foundation that gives a woman power in any dynamic with an avoidant. When a woman knows her value, she sets clear limits, not as a punishment, but as a form of self-respect. Avoidants are often drawn to this because it challenges them in ways that no amount of pursuit or pleading ever could. They are accustomed to relationships where control, distance, or emotional games dictate the rhythm. When a woman stands firm in her boundaries, she disrupts that pattern and introduces a new form of energy, one that is confident, grounded, and non-negotiable. For an avoidant, this can feel both intimidating and magnetic, because it represents something they secretly desire but cannot easily attain. A partner who loves fiercely yet remains whole and independent. Self-worth is closely tied to boundaries. A woman who knows her value doesn't chase attention or validation. She commands it by how she carries herself and the choices she makes. This doesn't mean she is rigid or unloving. It means she honors her emotional needs, refuses to settle for less than she deserves, and refuses to compromise her identity for someone else's comfort. Avoidants, who often struggle with vulnerability and emotional availability, are confronted by this clarity. They begin to see that the woman they once underestimated is not someone who will be manipulated or diminished. Her sense of self cannot be overridden by fear, indecision, or avoidance. This realization hits at the core of what they avoided in the first place: true intimacy with someone who is equally whole. The power of boundaries lies not only in protection, but in attraction. Avoidants are drawn to women who maintain their integrity because it signals strength, stability, and emotional intelligence. When they left, they may not have understood the significance of these qualities. But upon returning, they often recognize that the woman who refused to wait indefinitely or compromise her values possesses something they cannot ignore: a deep, unshakable sense of self. This is what keeps them thinking, wondering, and ultimately compelled to return, even after months or years apart. Furthermore, boundaries serve as a compass for both parties. They communicate what is acceptable, what is non-negotiable, and what will not be tolerated, reducing confusion and ambiguity. Avoidants respond to this clarity because it provides structure and shows that love does not require constant negotiation or emotional manipulation. By holding firm to her worth, the woman signals that connection must be based on respect and reciprocity, not fear or avoidance. This can awaken a previously hidden desire within the avoidant to rise to the occasion, to match the level of emotional maturity and commitment that he once avoided confronting. Ultimately, the woman who embodies strong boundaries and self-worth becomes a catalyst for change. She is not defined by waiting, chasing, or accommodating fear. She is defined by her strength, her clarity, and her unwavering sense of identity. For the avoidant, encountering such a woman is transformative. It forces reflection, challenges old patterns, and often inspires a return not out of convenience, but out of recognition that they left something irreplaceable. Her power lies not in forcing him back, but in being wholly herself, unshaken and uncompromised, which makes the pull of her presence irresistible. When an avoidant returns, it is important to understand that this is a second chance, not a guarantee. Their reappearance is often loaded with hope, curiosity, and desire, but it does not automatically mean that past patterns have vanished or that the future will be seamless. Avoidants are human. They have fears, habits, and coping mechanisms that are deeply ingrained. Their return is an opportunity, a test of both their growth and your discernment, and it should be approached with awareness rather than blind optimism. This distinction is critical because many women fall into the trap of assuming that the return itself is proof of change or commitment, when in reality it is simply a reflection of their current readiness and realization. The woman who has maintained her self-worth during their absence holds the true power in this situation. She recognizes that love is not about waiting indefinitely or lowering her standards for someone else's emotional availability. Instead, she approaches the second chance with clarity. She evaluates whether the avoidance return aligns with authentic growth and whether it respects the boundaries she has always set. This approach ensures that the renewed connection, if it happens, is built on mutual respect, trust, and emotional maturity, rather than desperation, guilt, or convenience. It shifts the dynamic from one of imbalance to one where both parties are accountable for their choices and behaviors. Understanding that a return is a second chance also empowers the woman to remain grounded. Avoidants are often skilled at creating emotional pull, sparking feelings of nostalgia, desire, and attachment. They may express regret, show affection, or promise change, but the key is not to be swept away by the narrative. True transformation is demonstrated through consistent action over time, not through words or fleeting gestures. The second chance becomes meaningful only when it reflects genuine effort, self-awareness, and the willingness to confront past avoidance patterns rather than repeating them. Moreover, the return of an avoidant highlights the lessons learned during separation. It reveals the value of patience, boundaries, and self-respect. Women who have stayed true to themselves often notice that the avoidant now approaches the relationship with a different energy, a recognition of the woman's worth, a desire to be present, and a willingness to engage with vulnerability in ways that were previously impossible. This is the moment when reflection meets opportunity, the avoidant has the chance to step into growth, and the woman has the power to decide if the timing and effort align with her own needs and standards. Ultimately, a second chance is an invitation, not an obligation. It represents potential, but it also requires discernment, awareness, and strength. The woman who understands this dynamic knows that she is not defined by whether the avoidant returns, but by how she navigates the opportunity. She maintains her self-respect, honors her boundaries, and ensures that any renewed connection is based on authenticity rather than fear, hope, or nostalgia. By approaching it this way, she transforms the situation from a repetition of past patterns into a possibility for genuine growth, connection, and fulfillment, making it clear that while the avoidant may have returned, the power has always remained in her hands. In conclusion, understanding why avoidants return to the woman they thought would wait forever is not about chasing, convincing, or changing them. It's about recognizing your own worth, honoring your boundaries, and staying true to yourself. Their return reflects their realization, growth, and the magnetic pull of a woman who has remained confident, independent, and unwavering. It is a reminder that your value is undeniable, that love thrives in mutual respect, and that transformation comes from clarity and self-respect, not desperation. Thank you for listening, for embracing these truths, and for remembering that the power to shape your relationships has always been in your hands.